Wow. Okay. Strong prediction. Nick, do you join that Bitcoin strategic reserve in calendar year 2025? All right. We're approaching year end. There's planned change in the presidential administration, as well as, both houses of Congress, it looks like, and a favorable Supreme Court for conservatives as well. So holy smokes, what does this mean? This is a big change. It's year end time, so what better time for predictions? Let's make some predictions and see if we're right or wrong in just a few months. Welcome to TNF Takes, the go-to spot for crypto companies and on-chain organizations. Before we dive in, if you enjoy this content, make sure to like and subscribe for more top-tier insights from industry experts who have been around the block. I'm Noah Buxton. I'm joined with Jeremy Now and Nick Ward from the network firm. We're here to help you establish trust, build efficient crypto operations, and stay ahead of the curve in an ever-evolving industry. Gentlemen, welcome.
I'm excited for this one today, Noah.
This is a lightning round.
Huh?
This is a lightning round. For our audience,
our version of poly market right here.
There are no notes. There are no notes. There is no scripting. There is no preparation. This is right from the minds of the experts, right off the top. So, okay, crypto markets are pumping. Obviously, sentiment is high. The market signal seems to be new administration will be better for crypto than old administration. Okay, I think everybody sees that. Let's pull it apart a little bit. Like what else is below the surface there? What are we actually going to see that will create meaningful change for the crypto industry, onshore, offshore, etc.? So, Jeremy, you look ready. I'm going to you first to give us your sort of first prediction.
All right. Well, there's a lot of talk about the Bitcoin strategic reserve at the federal and the state level. I'm going to say this, in some shape or form, this happens. If we look at the people in the administration, Trump went to the Bitcoin 2024 and promised a whole lot of things. He didn't promise a strategic reserve, but he was very pro crypto in his speech. He's got Lummis in his ear, talking like a bird. We've got RFK in the administration who wanted to buy, his strategic reserve was 4 million Bitcoin. Like that's 4x what Loomis wanted to talk about. If he's in Trump's ear, I feel pretty good about that. And then you have other people like Vance and Vivek and Tulsi who are pro-Bitcoin advocates. I'm pretty bullish. And then we also, Trump has even said, hey, maybe we can pay our debts down with a little Bitcoin, a Bitcoin or crypto. So I think there's some inertia behind this idea. I think the memetics are going to take it to the finish line in 2025.
Wow. Okay. Strong prediction. Nick, do you join that Bitcoin strategic reserve in calendar year 2025?
I think so. I would tamper down expectations a bit, where my bet is they might start with just holding what's been confiscated, right? Rather than actually going out and buying. So maybe that's the bipartisan middle ground of, look, I can't remember the exact number, but it's some 100,000 Bitcoin are sitting in the U.S. wallets that have been confiscated from various crimes, Silk Road, all these different things. So, hey, start there. It's a clean break of, we're not actually going and spending the money. We're just going to not liquidate what we have, and we'll start with.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm going to, I think I'm going to take the over. I'm going to go slightly longer than Jeremy. I think it happens, but I think that sort of the political, sort of the big ticket, items, the promises to be kept, so to speak, things that they ran on are not core Bitcoin reserve stuff. It's going to be a few other issues first. I think those probably take time. So I think we're probably looking a little bit later for this to happen. But I do think it's inevitable at this point that it happens. So there's a couple.
With this run up, it looks like someone might be front running them. Maybe even another government. So they're going to have to get on this train.
Prediction. So I think there's a couple things that come from that. Yeah, the downstream prediction you're alluding to is the front run. I think, as other developing economies, even sort of not third world economies start to see, okay, the U.S. is going to take this step. If they can move more quickly, to put it in place than the U.S., then that's an easy front run play, I think. And I'm almost sure is going to happen, right?
Game theory. The nation state game theory is playing out. When we all read The Sovereign Individual and the Bitcoin Standard 10 years ago, thinking, oh, this would be crazy if this actually happened. It kind of seems like it is. It's amazing to actually witness with that context and background.
So speaking to the Bitcoin Standard piece, but then here's one, to break this one down a little bit further. I think people think about a Bitcoin strategic reserve as being a backing or, the reserve currency, or a backing for our currency, that it's going to sit on the Treasury's balance sheet as a reserve asset against fiat currency or against the dollars issued. True? False?
False.
False. Yeah, I think it'll be like more like the strategic oil reserve, where they just have, this extra just in case type of thing. Will it be used to back the currency? Maybe eventually. I've also heard people saying, "Hey, maybe they'll sell some gold for Bitcoin," but I'd start with, it's just going to be kind of a pile of Bitcoin that they might acquire, kind of like the strategic oil reserve.
Yeah. It was really cool to hear Senator Lummis talk to the Digital Chamber group. She gave a great talk, which I can't replicate, but essentially she talked about her history as a policymaker and as a government official, in Wyoming through all the years in different agencies, and then as the treasurer and in the state Senate, and then eventually, as a U.S. federal representative and senator. And just hearing her perspective about like this actually being a hard money, use case that can really support, America's, the U.S.'s financial strength and position in the world was really compelling to me. It seemed very sober, like I really appreciated it, because the main sponsor of this bill is not, she's not making wild predictions. It's not, going to the crypto conference and saying, I'm backing crypto. It's very, very well underpinned. I thought it was like very well thought through. So, all right, that was just one prediction. There's many more. What else? Nick, I'll go to you. What's your other main sort of prediction?
I think one of the key ones is just that the adversity towards the industry just gets toned down much more, right? And even if you think about all the promises, maybe if you look at Trump's promises, some of the things at the talk, even if he doesn't execute on a lot of those, I think we can just compare the first Trump administration to the Biden administration last few years, and we all saw it, right? They're just lawsuits picked up from the SEC, most of which never came to fruition in terms of confirming whether certain assets were securities or not. But those are all big burdens to the companies that are getting pulled into those, right? And their professional service providers to some extent. So at the very least, a big positive for the industry is that all tones down and we can focus on building and less so battling, the different regulatory agencies.
How long does Gensler last? Is he going to make it till Inauguration Day or not? There's been a lot of talk about him not making it.
Yeah, I don't know how to read the tea leaves, right? Because I saw last week that he was resigning, last week, and obviously that didn't happen. So it's hard to say.
There's no reason for him to leave immediately, I don't think. I think he'll try for an orderly exit, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been some good reporting that he doesn't go to work anyway. He's barely around the agency, isn't seen as sort of a leader on culture. There's been a lot of staff turnover, so I think he, arguably wants to try and make a decent legacy out of this, and probably does like an orderly exit, sort of right before transition time.
I'm going to say he's at least announces he's out before Inauguration Day.
Okay. Well, yeah, he's going to announce that he's out before Inauguration Day. I would agree with that, but I think it's going to be close in time.
I'll be the one to go against and say it happens after, as part of just the orderly process.
Come take my job from my cold dead hands. Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, there's look, like we're a professional services firm, like we're serious about these things. Obviously, we have our individual beliefs, but I think one of the other things to communicate for the industry audience here is that there's more than just, sort of an anti-Gensler, an anti-SEC view, right? Like as a professional services firm, like we believe in well-structured, transparent markets, right? That is good for everybody. And does there need to be a regulator there? Yeah, in some context, yes, there needs to be a regulator there, right? What we've seen over the past years, unfortunately, has been a regulator that has tried to make policy or make law through enforcement and targeted enforcement. And that just isn't a good result. Are there bad actors out there that should ultimately be accountable to the law? Absolutely. Like, I think we all agree with that. That makes a better, safer space, right? We all want freedom in our neighborhood, right? We also don't want people walking around shooting each other, right? We're all for taking out bad guys, but we want to make clear rules for everybody else who wants to be a good player. So I think there's a couple things there. I think definitely we're going to see some policy coming from Capitol Hill finally. I'm not sure I'm going to love exactly what it is, right? It might be a little bit of a square peg round hole, but it's going to definitely be better than what we've had. I think it's going to create some clarity for folks. The other thing, back to sort of the SEC, just for our industry audience, how they can understand how this operates with professional services providers. I think the industry has had a really, really hard time getting the things that it needs from CPA firms. Whether you like it or not, big CPA firms, sort of own trust, transparency, licensing, right? You have to go to a CPA firm to get a financial statement audit to get that MTL license, right? And audit providers have been extremely reluctant to enter this crypto space because there's so much risk, right? Okay, the SEC is going after companies, but we can't figure why they're going after them and not them. Or, we've got videos on YouTube about Kim Kardashian, and that's a great thing to dangle, but we can't understand why that and not something else. So it's been a lot of not clear enforcement. And CPA firms see that and they go, okay, yeah, not worth the risk, not worth betting the firm, sort of on this one interesting startup client or mid-market client. That's going to change too, right? So public accounting firms that are registered with the PCAOB, the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, which is essentially an arm of the SEC, right? They have an enforcement avenue of their own or a risk of their own, right? So you should understand that when you're going out to shop for audit and other sort of attest services, even accounting services, that when you're talking to that provider or you're talking to the network firm, we've got our own risks, right, in serving companies. But I think that tones down as well, right? You're going to see leadership change at the PCAOB along with the SEC. You're going to see sort of approach change as well. I think, what they focus on will be a little bit different. I think this will free a lot of public accounting firms up to sort of restart the digital asset practice or take on, additional clients, which right now it seems the most comfort place is miners, but we're going to see them edge back into exchanges, other platform service providers.
Thanks, Noah. Yeah, I got one for you guys. Are we going to see a state or at the federal level, a new one adopt a proof of reserves law in 2025?
I mean, we talked about Lummis a lot in her strategic reserve proposal, which does include the proof of reserves. So I think that bodes well for that.
I'm going to say yes as well, but maybe not a clean bill of its own. I think it's going to be within a larger market structure bill. Certain types of licensees, so to speak, certain types of operators will have to have a proof of reserves component. And I'll make it even easier on my bet. I think that they may or may not call it proof of reserves, but it's basically going to be that.
Asset liability reconciliation,
Exactly, yeah.
Or customer account reconciliation. Yes, some euphemisms going out there for sure.
And I think it's very possible that another state does something as well,
Yeah, we've seen rumblings of Pennsylvania, right, has proposed something. So it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to that game theory. We're talking nation states, but within our own country, right? Each state does have their own autonomy to do certain things. And so maybe we start to see that game theory play out across the states.
This is an argument we've made to industry for a long time, actually, is, that, okay, let's say you're operating an exchange, right? Do you want to do a proof of reserves? You might be interested in the idea to do it. You might think it could create some good customer benefit or goodwill. But if everybody's not doing it, why am I going to go take the expense and time and effort to do it if I don't have a regulatory requirement, right? If states do it, I think exchanges, similar operators should be more willing or more interested even in a patchwork of state approaches to adopt proof of reserves. Because if you think, it's very different, right? Would you rather sort of do a sort of prescribed, very clear proof of reserves process and deliver it to a state regulator for your MTL license? Or would you rather have some sort of more opaque, like very broadly worded proof of reserves law from the Fed that you now need to take your proof of reserves and report it to the Treasury, And like, that's kind of the difference we're talking about. Now, look, maybe they're both good if you get to proof of reserves, and that means, more stability for the market. We don't have flash crash based on fraudulent operators and things like that. But I think that operators need to think about that. Would they be more willing to invite a state approach, cooperate with state regulators, cooperate with industry players to like create that framework? Or do they want to just hold off and wait for the inevitable, which might be the further top-down approach?
Yeah, and I think the advice to crypto companies, it seems like this is coming at some point. And the good news is a lot of crypto companies have been opting in and doing this themselves without even a regulatory requirement. I think River was the last one that just came out with their proof of reserves, but there's been OKX, Binance, Kraken. There's been a lot of exchanges already doing this. So I think regulators are taking note of this and saying, "Oh, this is actually something good, right?" And this is something that's, we'd much rather this. It's crypto native. It's an industry invention, which is pretty cool. It's kind of like AMMs, right? It's an industry invention that kind of TradFi adopted. Proof of reserves is one of those things. So I think this is something that the industry should be leaning into, and maybe saying, "Hey, well, why aren't banks doing this? Maybe we can get other types of companies doing this too."
Yeah,
Yeah,
and to
and even if
Noah's
you're not,
point, like the industry leading it is positive because then the regulators look to what they're already doing and start to formulate policy off that versus, a regulator who's not in the industry and it's just like we need to do something to help protect it. Here's our brain dump of things we think you should do, which might be overly burdensome, might not actually address the problem. Hopefully, they're looking to what's already out there, which will make a much smoother process.
awesome. Great insights, guys. Any couple parting shots? Any other big ones?
I could go all day. SAB 121, does that get repealed under this new administration?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, but I think it's the mechanics of how you do that. I don't know right off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know mechanically because I think it did or is in the process of coming back around to the House right to vote, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hopefully, go ahead.
I was going to kind of say another topic. So if you had another SAB 121 comment, feel free.
I don't have another SAB 121. I have a hopeful of they address, wallet sovereignty and just individuals not needing to report everything out of their own personal wallet, especially if they're paying peer to peer, right? Like that's a big one that I think we've seen various different laws or just regulatory action that make everyone nervous about that. But if we think back to cash, right, just cash is great, right? You settle instantly. You don't need to know much about your partner. You just know that, hey, I'm handing a bill that can be trusted and settles what was owed. That's the point of peer-to-peer crypto. And so protecting that is definitely.
Yeah, there's a couple other interesting rumblings like negating all crypto or capital gains on crypto or Bitcoin. Like, man, if that happens, it'd be insane. Does that happen in this 4 years, guys?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's hard to think about a clean wipe of capital gains, because it's such an advantage to like holders. So I could just see so much pushback on that stat alone.
Yeah, and it's if you wipe taxation or whatever capital gain on crypto, like what about all the other assets, right? Like it's going to be a little bit of an unfair treatment, but then I guess it could be like the El Salvador treatment where it's like, oh well, it's almost, if that's the case, it's almost like legal tender here, right? It's like it's a currency at that
I
point.
could see that. I could see a limited approach where there's like certain specific assets, and it would probably be Bitcoin, right? That would maybe have some tender status and therefore not a capital gain treatment. But it's really hard to imagine, that this, that existing holders get sort of grandfathered in, no cap gains. It's just so disparate from other asset holdings. Like, then why not gold, right?
Yeah.
Yes, digital gold, but why not physical gold, or why not paper gold that I hold on NASDAQ or whatever? Yeah, I think I think the political support for that would be extremely low. Obviously, you're going to get no Democrats to vote for that. And even on the Republican side, I think, sort of the legacy conservative group isn't going to vote for that either. So
we got 3 no's. Sorry, guys. Maybe we're just self-interested. We help with crypto tax.
Can you do that by executive order? I'm thinking no, but maybe, right? I guess
that's one I hope we're unanimously wrong about, right?
Yeah, exactly. That would be good to be wrong on that one.
Yeah, there's one other interesting thing about kind of the administration, how it's looking to shape up is Howard Lutnick. He's the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, who holds all the reserves for Tether. I don't know how that's going to play out, but I know there's been a lot of challenges between Tether and certain jurisdictions in the U.S. and the feds. I think Tether, I mean, it's already the dominant stablecoin, but man, this could really give them some clarity that they need to be able to, I don't know if they're holding products back or anything like that, but Man, that's got to feel good for them if Howard Lettner's on that team.
I'm not read into that one, so I can't comment. But other than to say it sounds good, sounds good for them anyway.
Yeah. I don't know how it materializes, but yeah, probably a tether W.
To that point, yeah, maybe the question just stablecoins in general, right? Are they seen more favorably, and do we see the U.S. government kind of embrace them as a whole? Because I think everyone in the industry has realized, maybe not from day one, but early on, that stablecoins, especially U.S. dollar pegged, are good for the U.S. dollar, right? Because it's increasing the network usage, and especially
Absolutely.
we've always talked about debanked in the industry, but debanked and access to U.S. dollars, stablecoins directly solve, which again, big positive for the US dollar network, separating all our other crypto notions aside and Bitcoin kind of taking over. But so I think favorability to stablecoins would be.
Well, I mean, because stable coins in the aggregate are one of like the top U.S. debt or treasury purchasers, like more
At
than
one
most
point, they
nations.
were 16 or 19th largest holder of U.S. Treasuries. Yeah.
It's probably higher even now, right?
Right.
So it's very much in the U.S.'s interest to get these things. It's a distribution mechanism for the dollar, like you said, Nick. Like that's huge. If you want to keep that reserve currency status as long as you can, like you should be pumping stable coins for sure.
Yeah, I think that definitely happens. I think that's pretty quick too, because that's doesn't really require a change in the law. I think you have SAB 121, right, which has been prevented banks from holding reserve assets, right? Because if they need to hold crypto in order to back up a stable coin, or they need to hold a bunch of dollars, that increases their capital reserve requirement. And so that can sort of throw off the balance sheet of the bank, basically. So that's been a big blocker. That can go away at some point, right? And then, but the other stuff is basically administrative law. It's sort of the policy of the administration, right? Like, how are bank regulators, how's the Fed going to look at banks holding dollars on behalf of stablecoin issuers? I think probably pretty favorably, right? I think that probably opens up pretty easily. And then the next level is, okay, well, what about a bank being a direct issuer? What a bank being a stablecoin issuer? And the Silvergates of the world are going to be very frustrated, I'm sure. But I think that will open up as well.
And do we find Satoshi in these 4 years? HBO said they found him. I don't know. Some people keep talking, saying that they found him. I'm going to go no. We don't know who Satoshi is at the end of these 4
I don't
years.
ever want to know.
Exactly.
I don't think I mean, he's held out this long. I don't see what makes him come out. And kudos to him and stepping away the way he did. I think it was huge for the industry. I don't think it short term would cause some disruption, but ultimately doesn't matter now. But
okay. Nick says no on the Satoshi rug pull. Jeremy, no, I agree.
Maybe here's a better question: do the Satoshi coins ever move?
I'd say definitely not next year. Definitely not in these 4 years. I'm going to say all time. I'm going to say nay. I think good chance Satoshi might be dead. Rest in peace. But yeah, I'm going to say no.
That's kind of my perspective too. Yeah. And, Satoshi no longer being with us, so to speak, is more and more likely every year. Gentlemen, there you go. That was fun. That was right off the top, some quick impressions. So if you enjoyed that content, again, like and subscribe. We'd love to work with you. We'd love to meet you personally. Check the show notes for a link to the site. And we'll be with you again on more accounting, audit, tax-related topics.
I look forward to next year when we evaluate this, right? And we see who got the most correct.
Well, if we're wrong, we're just going to delete it, right, guys? We just delete it and pretend it never happened. If we're right, we're going to promote it. I was joking. All right.
The internet never forgets, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're going to let it stand either way.
Yeah. All right, guys.
All right, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.